Greetings from beautiful downtown Hebo. And quite frankly, I'd say right now that this is the best place in the state of Oregon. Actually, maybe the nation. But anyway, it's an absolutely fantastic place. Daffodils have been blooming for over a month, about a month and a half now, something like that. No, it's only March. Okay, well, for about a month, the daffodils have been blooming. Some people are still trying to get out of snow, like Minnesota. But so we're having a great time here. Daffodils are blooming. And as you know, those of you who drive in the parking lot out here, our plum trees are just absolutely blooming away. And then we have wild apples around here, and they're all blooming. So this is really getting to be a nice little place to be. And, Crystal's getting ready. She's looking at planting the garden all out and getting the seedlings started and all that stuff there. And, a couple of months, and Anna's going to be busy because she's going to, the goats down there are going to be having their babies and stuff. And so she had 4 goats that she knew were, they were pregnant. And she had 3 that were in question. And we figured, well, one of them might be positive here. The other 2, they're kind of shaky. The one was like, yeah, well, I'm sharpening up the knife because, we've had her for a couple of years and she hasn't had any kids yet. And it's just, we got to cut down on the cost. That alfalfa's getting expensive, So, I'm getting the knife out and I'm looking at her going, let's see, that's kind of a ham right there. And it's, so I'm starting to drool because I think she is going to taste real good. Apparently she heard me. Because Anna had all 3 of those does tested and they all came back positive. So it's like, oh man, yeah. So here what we're seeing is that life goes on, doesn't it? Things are happening. Life goes on. And we still have to make decisions about what are we going to do with our lives. We take care of the animals, plant the garden, and we can get focused on all that stuff there. I would say don't focus on the media. Because quite frankly, it used to be that they gave you the news of what has taken place. Now they give you their opinion. That's not news. That's what magazines are for. You can write an opinion out and put it in a magazine or whatever, like the Inquirer or something. And, it's all, you don't know what's true anymore. So it's getting to be where just leave the media alone, because one thing about the media is they're really pushing fear. Oh my goodness, fear this, fear that. And how many of you know that if you're going to make a decision based on fear, it's going to be wrong? You can make a decision based on faith or make a decision based on fear. We should make them based on faith. So, pay attention to what the scriptures tell us. We know that the Hebrews went through all kinds of stuff. And, we can learn by what they've done. You can take a history class. You can learn from history. Why are we, having to deal with the stuff that we're dealing with? Look at history and you'll find out. The decisions that have been made all the way along the line, gets us so you can learn from it. You know? Don't repeat the same mistakes that we've made in history. Learn from it. You know? Do we have people that over the years, when you look at history, people have rebelled against whatever government was over them? Yeah, they've rebelled. And what do they do when they rebel? They tear down statues. They burn government buildings. They destroy art. Come on, you know? They tend to destroy the country because how many of you know they're going to build back better? You know? Yeah, so you destroy the country so you can build back better. However, the underlying philosophy in that whole build back better, that's so that they are in charge. So it ends up being a power issue, you know? So, history is important. Okay? What's the most important history we have? What God has done in your life. Okay? What has God done in your life is the most important history that you ever will have. And you're writing it. You're the one that's writing that story. So the question starts coming down to is, do you remember those God experiences in your life? Not just that you go, oh, yeah, God exists. You know, okay, fine. You can read a book on that, or you can start taking and have some experiences with God. Because once you start experiencing God, then what's in that book comes to life. Otherwise, quite frankly, it's a bunch of chicken scratchers on a page. It's no different than any other book. But when you start experiencing God, oh, now it makes a lot of difference. Okay? We need to experience God. What has He done in your life? When the Hebrews experienced God, what did they do? They set up an altar. You know, it's like, okay, let's not forget about what God did. Or they'll have another feast. That's why they have the feast. Because God did something in their life and they go, we need to remember what God did, so let's have a feast. Actually, some of it I think they like to party too. But anyway, what's God, done in your life? Why do we have this tree in the corner? It's referred to as a tree of life. Well, when it's first put up there wasn't a leaf one on there. Okay? The leaves were what? What God has done in somebody's life. So it's alive. God is doing stuff. So we need to remember what God is doing in our life. So, do you reflect? When stuff starts coming up, do you reflect and do you remember what God has done? Because as you will remember what God has done, that's going to help you to overcome whatever situation is facing you at the moment. All right? So, last week I talked to you about David and Goliath, and we're going to review some of that this week because somebody said, I don't know where you're trying to go with all that. It wasn't really clear. Like, uh-oh. So we're gonna try to make it a little clearer this week about the David and Goliath issue, because it's something that we can learn from, that we can apply in our lives. It's important for us to understand this. So we're going to go over this a little bit more. Okay? Give you some background on David. Starting off with, David was the youngest son of Jesse. That meant that he had 7 older brothers. And he also had an older sister. I believe it was Abigail, something like that. No? Well, one of his... Yeah, but he had a sister too. Okay, and I can't, it starts with A. And she was about halfway in there, in her brother's somewhere. Oh. No, okay, different one. Can't remember. All right. And I looked it up too. Okay, so here he is, 7 older brothers and an older sister. And now the scriptures don't really tell us the reason why, but David was viewed as the most expendable person in the family. You know, it's kind of like this. They kind of viewed him as worthless. You know, he was the youngest. It's maybe like the goat that Anna has, where the value is how food you put into this critter. The more food you put into them, the more valuable they are. And if David's the youngest, so he hasn't. They don't have as much invested in him. So anyway, it's kind of like this. He was considered worthless. He was expendable. Yay! Think of your family, huh? Wouldn't it be really nice if your family just thought that you were worthless? It's like, if you ended up being homeless and on Skid Row, would anybody care? Why? You're not valuable. Like, really? Oh, goodness. Gee. Then you wonder why people have identity issues. If their family figures that they're just a royal pain in the patootie, and they don't care about it. It's better for them. Their life is much better. If you're just out of their life, it's like, see where relationships and families fall apart? How do you view the kids? Well, David was viewed as what? Worthless. And so what happens? When you're worthless, you get all the dirty jobs. You get all the dangerous jobs. And the dangerous job for them was, well, you got to take care of the sheep. That's dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because he had to deal with the lions and the bears. And they didn't have a 300 Weatherby. So, basically all he had was a slingshot, and that's pretty much it. But David was out there. He was protecting the sheep and stuff. And let's just say that he wasn't successful at protecting the sheep. He wasn't successful in taking care of the bear and the lion. Well, if he didn't take care of the bear and the lion, he ended up being what? Lunch meat for the bear and the lion? Okay, and since he was worthless, that was okay. If you got to, lose somebody, let it be him. Now, but David was there. He's taking care of the sheep. And I can relate with David in this aspect that the sheep need to be protected. That's what shepherds kind of are for, is to take care of the sheep, try to protect them. So that when the enemy starts showing up on your turf, what do? You go out and take on the enemy. So, it's kind of like this. If you really want to see me really get upset over something, it's when the enemy is being successful in one of the sheep in separating them from the flock so that they can devour them. Yeah, that, I don't like him, I just don't like him. All right, so, but getting back to David, okay, was David faithful and diligent in the tasks that were assigned to him? Yeah. Now here's the thing. By him taking care of those tasks, what did he learn how to do? He learned how to fight. He had what? He had that slingshot. And I don't know about you, but if I was a teenage boy and I had a slingshot and a whole lot of time on my hands because I'm just looking at sheep, you practice. let's see, can I hit that branch, or, can I hit that other rock out there? Practice, practice, practice. All that time he had out there, what's he doing? He's practicing. Well, the practicing, he's learning how to fight. And he did. Okay? Now, so you can see then that as he learned how to fight the bears and the lions, that equipped him to do what? To take on a bigger fight, Goliath. A more dangerous fight, Goliath. Okay? It's kind of like this. There are seasons in your life when God is going to take you through them, and he's going to prepare you in that season in your life so that you'll be prepared for the season that's coming down the road, that the battle is going to be even bigger. It's going to be more intense. But if you don't learn how to do the fighting at a smaller scale, you're not going to know how to fight on the larger scale. Now, the problem in this whole thing, our problem in the whole thing, is that we want the future to take place on our timetable. It's a problem. Okay? Moses was in Egypt. And this is when he was a youngin', right? Okay, he's in the palace. He is the most eligible bachelor in Egypt. I mean, he had the nicest horses, the nicest chariot. He's the playboy of Egypt, you could say. He's the desire of all the women. He was it. Moses knew when he was in the palace that he was going to be the deliverer for the Jews, for Israel. He was going to deliver them from their captivity. Okay? He knew that. So what happened one day when he was out and he saw an Egyptian whipping a Hebrew? He stepped in and killed him. The Egyptian, not the Hebrew. He stepped in, protected the Hebrew, killed the Egyptian. Because he overstepped the timing, then he had to get out of town because otherwise Pharaoh was going to kill him. So he had to get out of town. For the next, that first part was 40 years. He got out of town for what? 40 years. He's on the backside of the desert being humbled. He had the nicest horses. Awesome stuff. Now he's on the backside of the desert with a donkey. You go from Clydesdale to donkey. It's, nah. So he's there, but on the backside of the desert, he was getting equipped for what was coming down the future. Now, back to David, all right? And if you want, go ahead and read the 17th chapter of 1 Samuel, because that has a whole story of David and Goliath. Great place to go. If you haven't read it for a while, go ahead and read it again. And because I keep missing stuff. I study this stuff out, and I miss stuff. And so Lord will have me go back and study it again. And it's like, how did I miss that? I've only studied it, 16 times already. But there was something I showed you last week that I hadn't, that I didn't know about before. It's like, So, but anyway, if you go through it and you find something, go ahead and clue me in. I like that. All right? We can find out more that way. But anyway, one of the things that we find here then in chapter 17 is that David's going to go out and fight Goliath. So, how is he going to go out and fight him? Well, Saul gives him gives him his armor, gives him his helmet, gives him his sword, and David does what? He checks it all out. Puts it all on, checks it out. Okay, how can I move in this thing? Well, Saul is a bigger man than what David was. So it's just, he couldn't move in him. He's used to being footloose and he's able to move. He couldn't move in all that stuff. So it's like, no. Did God teach him how to fight with a helmet and a sword and armor? No. How did he learn how to fight? With a slingshot. One of those twirly things, okay? Slingshot, all right? So he says, can't do it. Have you ever found out that people tell you, or you can go to some teaching or something, and it's like, okay, you want to do ministry? This is how you need to do it. It's like, really? I'll give you an example. On witnessing, all right? You go through this whole class on witnessing. And one of the questions that they give you to ask somebody, and the question is okay, if you die, when you die, and you find yourself at the pearly gates of heaven, and God asks you the question, why should I let you into my heaven? What would you tell him? There is a pastor, and he got a hold of that stuff, and he goes, okay, I have to do this. So every Tuesday he was going to go out, and he was going to canvass the area, and he was knock on people's door, and he's going to ask them this question, and so on and so forth. You know what happened? Every Tuesday his stomach got tied up in this big old knot. It's like, oh God, I got to do this. It's like, and so he would force himself to do this. He actually came across some people that one day, and they're going, I don't know. What am I supposed to tell him? He had never gotten that far. He had to go back and study and find out what the answer was. Because it's just, yeah. but it was, that's what you're supposed to do. So he did it. It was horrible. He dreaded it. It was just, but the people that finally says, well, what do you do? What is the answer to that? And he said, I'll come back and talk. He came back, talked to him later. That couple absolutely ran with it because that was their gifting. That was their gifting. And they just, and he says, that was incredible. He goes, it's not my gifting. It's theirs, And but his gifting were in other areas, all right, and doing tremendous stuff. And he's overseeing, I don't know, last time I heard, about 7 different churches that just kind of mushroomed off of the main church that he had. Didn't open up any doors, wasn't looking for that to happen. It just happened on him, It's kind of like this. Some churches are what? They're great at harvesting souls. If you want a person to get saved, take them to that church because they'll just, they'll be saved. They'll be introduced to Jesus and all that. Other churches are absolutely great in children's ministries, It's like, oh my goodness, So what's the strength of this church? You know what the strength of this church is? Missions. We support missionaries. We've had missionaries that come here and we give them an offering and they leave and then they look at the check. That's the way you should do it, is don't look at it right in front of the pastor. You go down the road and look at it, Went down the road and they looked at it and then turned around and came back and said, how can you do this? And it's like, because that's what the people gave. I didn't pad it at all. We didn't give it extra, whatever. So it looks good. That's just what the people gave. That's what the Lord laid on their heart. And that's what they gave. And they're going, I go to much larger churches than this and don't get anything near this. So And Hans blames his passion upon us because his passion is missions. He loves missionaries. He wants, loves going on mission trips. And that's basically the position they kind of have him in the church where he's at is he's, involved in missions. And he goes, Dad, it's your fault. You had all those missionaries coming to the church, So it's like, okay. I like being blamed for some things. That was a good one, Oh, so, so the bottom line here, it's kind of like this. Go with your strengths. What is your strength? Go with that. Don't try to be a carbon copy of what somebody else is doing. Somebody else's walk with the Lord, whatever. You can learn from it, yes, but it's your walk with the Lord. He's gifted you with gifts, abilities, strengths. Go with your strength. All right? Because that is how God has equipped you. That's why He's given you that gift. Go with it. Now, let's see how David chose to fight. What he was going to use to fight with. And we see that in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 40. It reads, Then he took his staff in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, that is, in his shepherd's pouch. And his sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. All right, now, he used the sling. He used that. And most of the scriptures will tell you that he flung the stone and hit that uncircumcised Philistine in the forehead. And the stone was buried in the forehead. Problem, Goliath had a helmet on. So the chances are that if you had a stone about so big and it's going 130 miles an hour and it hits you in the forehead, where are you going to go? Backwards. Goliath went forward. So you sit there and you look at it and you go back to the original language and you find out that instead of forehead, it was more like foreleg. And there's a spot on the leg that is not protected, that stone could hit, and if that stone hits that leg and gets buried in that leg, takes out the leg, which way is it going to fall? Forward. So it's like, all right. So he used the sling. Did David use the staff? When it came time to kill Goliath, he drew Goliath's sword out and cut Goliath's head off with Goliath's own sword. Okay? It makes reference that he took the staff, but there's no place in there that he ever used the staff. So why did he take the staff? Well, this is one of the things that I found out, last week I shared with you. If you want to know about a person's history, their experiences with God and the Hebrews, they would put it on their staff. So his history of what God did in his life was all on that staff. So you can sit there and go, oh, okay. If you wanted to know about his life, everything that went on, you get a hold of his staff. And if you can decipher the images and everything else, however they marked up that staff, you would know exactly what happened in that guy's life. So what was David taking? He was taking all the experiences that he had where God had intervened in his life was on that staff. He took, you could basically say, the staff of faith with him. And when that staff was with him, he could go out there and it's like, okay, this is what God has done in my life. And you think I'm supposed to be afraid of you? Yeah, it was his testimony. Now, with that in mind, he has a staff. Now see how he addresses Goliath. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, 45 through 47. But David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, a spear, and a saber. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you and remove your head from you. Then I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild animals of the earth, so that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that this entire assembly may know that the Lord does not save by sword or by spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will hand you over to us. If a person hasn't experienced God and have a relationship with God, it's like, dude, you're like that tall, and Goliath is like that tall? You got to be an idiot to think you're going to take him on. David had all the confidence in the world. He could step forward and say, you're mine. I'm going to own you. You know? David was stepping out in faith. How could he do that? Because he had not only seen, but, basically, he experienced how God had enabled him to be victorious in the past. And he knew God was going to enable him to be victorious in the present. All right? Now, another point we need to bring up here is, where did the battle take place? Where did the battle take place? The battle took place in Judah. By this time, David had already been anointed by the prophet Samuel to be the next king of Israel. Well, actually, Judah. Because at this point it was, Anyway. And that was in chapter 16, by the way. Which is right before 17, if you didn't know. Okay? So, how does this all relate to us? And I'm going to try to wrap this up here. There are some of us who are basically facing Goliaths in our own life. It may be our health, maybe in your finances, maybe in relationships, it may be in addictions, or it may be just some stinking thinking that you're having a difficult time overcoming. Just what's going on between your ears. You're having problems with your emotions, which cause you to be angry. You have a root of bitterness in there, and it's like, okay, do you need to forgive somebody? A great way to get rid of a root of bitterness is to forgive the person that you have hard feelings toward. Just forgive them. Okay? So how are we going to be victorious? Well, this is where history comes into it. You've experienced God in the past, in your past life. Through those experiences, He's been doing what? But equipping you to take care of the present. And as the present gets taken care of, that's going to take care of the future. Is stuff going to come up in the future? Yeah, because as we learn how to be victorious in the present, when the future comes, you'll also know how to be victorious there. Now, David was victorious where in Judah, that was his turf. That was his turf. What is our turf? This. This is our turf. So if the enemy is going to try to do something on our turf, we have the authority to address that. Okay? This is our turf. This is where we get to defeat the enemy. Whatever Goliath is taking place, is coming at you. We defeat him here. We can carry on from, last week where Michael and Dwayne were praying, break chains and stuff. Well, this is, breaking chains. Breaking chains, dealing with Goliath. The battle starts here. Take care of this battle, then we can go from here and do what? Do Tillamook. Okay? Tillamook County. Then we can spread from there and go what? State of Oregon. May actually become a Republican state. The state. There we get to do what? Take on the country. Because we know that we have a battle going in this country. Now here's the thing about it. This is what's interesting about the Constitution. For all of those who served in the military, when you served in the military, you were basically doing what? But defending the Constitution of the United States of America. No matter what the politicians said. Your commitment is to defend the Constitution of the United States. So you have an extra responsibility. You have an extra authority. All right? Go for it. Now, the beautiful thing that you have going on here is you have a bunch of us older fogies that have had some tremendous experiences with God through the years. And the thing about it is that we get to come beside the younger people, and we need to, be able to encourage them, equip them, turn them loose, so that they can take the foundation that is here, what's already been established in here, in the church, whatever, and they can build the next generation. So it keeps on going. It doesn't die, but it keeps on going. This is supposed to be a living organism where it just keeps on going. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to close it out and shut off the light, I think. You can teach an old dog new tricks. So I'm going to, close out the service, and then those that are dealing with a Goliath in their life, we're going to pray for you. I don't know. I might be bold and have those guys that prayed last week. You guys ready to pray again this week? You up for it? Well, we'll see. Okay. But it's like this. You have a Goliath in your life. You have a situation that you don't know how you're going to be victorious over. Great. God loves that stuff. Because it's going to be Him. It's not going to be you. It's going to be all Him. You can try to figure your way out of it. You can even have a road map in a paper bag, and you still won't be able to find your way out. God goes, hey, here. And He just shreds the paper bag and lets you out. God can do it. When you can't, He can. So you might as well let Him. Okay? So I'll close it out, and then those who are just dealing with a Goliath, this is time that he gets defeated. So Lord, we thank you for this awesome day that you've made, and Lord, what people are going through, health issues, financial issues, relationship issues, they got all kinds of issues that are going on, and they don't have a clue as to how they're going to be victorious, how they're going to survive the battle that they are in. Lord, right now, lift up each and every one that is having issues, that you would step in and that you would absolutely start wiping out the Goliaths in the lives of the people. In the lives of the people. And that each one what you've done in their past, that your Spirit would refreshen their memory so that they can step out in faith and release whatever issue is happening in their life. And Lord, if the main problem is they have to have a proper attitude, bless them with a proper attitude. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.